Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast from Practical E-Commerce, hosted by entrepreneur Eric Bandholz.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Bandholz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Steve. Welcome.
Dude, I love how your energy level goes up to like 12 as soon as the podcast record button is hit.
I'm not much into comedy, so I can't speak highly on it or strategies or anything. But basically, you hit them with a good joke at the start and the good joke at the end, and people think the whole show is great. So that's what I try to do, is just bring the energy at the end and, well, I bring the energy at the beginning.
I missed the joke. Did you give a joke? I must have missed it.
No, in business, is actually the worst thing to do is start a talk with a joke. I've done so many talks with a joke, and then they just fall flat. And I've kind of learned my lesson.
You got a special kind of humor, right? That people got to get used to. So
it was Clavio Boston 2019. I was the last talk of the show, and I think people must have been tired or something. But I was dropping these, like I was bombing, like total bombing, just like.
What are you talking about? I was there. I was at that event. You did great.
Yeah, I mean, normally I get a couple chuckles or groans with my jokes, but it was just like silent. So it's always weird on like stage where you have like 200 people, and you know all about this because you just put on an event. Like you have 200 people in the audience, and you don't know if they're connected or not connected with what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. You got to adjust on the fly sometimes.
Yeah. So, Steve, welcome to your third episode.
Dude, has it been that many? Well, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it was November 2022, last time you were on the show. And at the time, you were working on your book. And you just launched. You are a Wall Street Journal bestseller, right?
I am. Very proud of that. Last 3 years of my life.
All right, so tell our listeners, we're going to focus on the book. What's up with this book?
What's up with the book? Well, it's called The Family First Entrepreneur. It's about my values, how to prioritize your life so that the business doesn't run you, and you get a lot out of it so that you have freedom to do whatever you want to do and spend time with who you want.
That's pretty cool. How many pages is it?
You know what? I don't know off the top of my head. I'd say it's like 260. Does that sound right?
I mean, that seems like a lot of words. Like, first of all, how do you come to the decision to write a book? And what is the strategy behind it?
It's always been a bucket list item. That's the main reason why I did it. It's definitely not a money play. I always had this dream of taking my kids to a Barnes & Nobles and showing my book on the shelf. And I just got to do that 2 weeks ago. So in terms of business and the strategy, I think if you can hit a bestseller list, that instantly adds credibility to your business. And outside of that, I think it's a pretty good lead gen for anything else that you do. Like if you sell a class or a digital product or a membership or something like that, people can find you that way. It's like a low-cost way to find more about you and what you do.
It doesn't seem like a low-cost thing because you said it took 3 years.
Oh, low cost meaning someone can pay like $20 or something.
Oh, for someone to buy into your...
For me, yeah, it's not low cost. Okay, so I got a book deal, which means that I got an advance. So I guess...
How does that happen? Do you reach out to publishers?
Yeah, so that process actually took a year. What I had to do is I had to put together a book proposal. And I was actually just looking at it the other day, just for nostalgia reasons. And that thing was like 50 pages long. It basically outlined all the audiences I had. It had projections on how many books that I could sell. It had an outline of the book, and it included a sample chapter as well. It was a lot of work to put that thing together. And then once I had that...
Well, go back a little bit. How did you know to piece it together like that?
Oh, yes. Just in the course of running my podcast, I had interviewed a lot of best-selling authors. And so I just hit them up and I said, hey, how do I get a book deal and all that stuff. And one of my buddies, Jeff Goins, he was experimenting or dabbling with like a book in a box type of service, kind of like what Tucker Max does, but not quite the same. Basically like a book consultant, so to speak. And so I was his second customer ever. So he helped walk me through the entire process of how to get a book deal. I knew I wanted to go traditionally published because mainly for ego reasons, really, right? If you're doing it for the money, I think self-publishing is the best way to go because you get to keep all the proceeds. When you go traditionally published, that carries with it some prestige. It's much easier to hit a bestseller list if you are traditionally published. And in fact, hitting some of the lists traditionally published is the only way to go for the most part. Plus, the respect of my mom, like if I self-published something, she wouldn't have given me any props for it. So
yeah, I mean, I wrote this little booklet that I include in orders. Technically, I guess it's a book, and I've done like 30,000, 60,000, something like that.
Dude, that's a lot.
Which is a lot, yeah, but I just include it for free in like every order, so it's not like I have 60,000 people who have bought it, but it doesn't have that same prestige. It'll never be on any kind of bestseller list. It doesn't have like one of those ISNs or
ISBNs,
barcodes.
Yeah.
So you went the traditional route. You pitched to how many publishers before you found one that would?
I don't remember. I would say less than 10, somewhere like 8 to 10 publishers, I would say. So there's the big 5, right? Simon Schuster, HarperCollins, Penguin. I can't remember the other 2, but I talked to them all. You basically hop on a Zoom call, you meet the publisher, see if you get along, and that sort of thing. And then you set some sort of date in the future where all the publishers put in a bid, how much they want to pay you in advance for the book to write it. And then on that one day, you look at all the offers and you select the one that you want to go with.
How many offers did you get? And what did these offers look like, if you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I got 4 offers out of the ones that I talked to, and they're all very different. The big 5, like HarperCollins is the one I ultimately went with. They gave the highest advance, but they probably offered the least amount of promotional help. And then there were these other smaller publishers that I got offers from also, where they don't pay as large of an advance, but they devote more marketing resources to help you promote and get the word out. I don't know if that's true or not. Like, I was always a little skeptical on how much they could help with the marketing, but that was one of their value props, for example, from some of the smaller shops. I would say of all the big 5 traditional publishers that I got an offer from, they were all around the same amount. And it was just a matter of which publisher you got along with, which publisher would let you write whatever you want to write without much intervention, or how you feel about it. And there's all these little contractual things, which ironically, I didn't pay that much attention to because this wasn't really a money play. But I actually looked at my contract recently because someone asked about it. And I was a little embarrassed that I didn't know the details of the contract. But I don't know if people listening are interested, but I pretty much get a 15% cut off of any hard copy. I think it's 25% off of an ebook or an Audible book. And I got an advance. And I'll just say I got a 6-figure advance. And I won't make any more than that 6-figure advance until like all the book sales exceed the advance amount.
Yeah, like total book sales. So like your book retails for what, $25, $20? What is it?
It retails for 30 something, but I think it's on sale right now for like $25, $26.
Okay, so it's $25. Let's do some quick math. How many units?
Oh, to make up a 6-figure advance? It's like tens of thousands of books, yeah.
Yeah, so if 4,000 with just like the top line, and then I guess, do they factor it in from like a profitability standpoint, or is it from just like a top line perspective?
It's how much I make. My cut goes towards the advance. And this isn't even accounting for like international rights and that sort of thing also, which all kind of goes into it as well.
Yeah, so there seems like a huge risk to these publishers for that. I mean, a 6-figure advance, they must feel pretty confident that they can move that amount of units for a book. Like most books don't make the bestseller list, right?
The average book sells 300 units, something like that.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing. Like, can you imagine running $100,000 for 300 units?
Here's the thing. I mean, the way I see the publishing business, they're just like venture capitalists, right? They invest in a bunch of people who they think could be successful. And really all they need is like one James Clear or one Mark Manson to just make their business worth it for like the next 10 years.
Yeah, because like Atomic Habits has sold how many millions of books?
Atomic Habits, I'll tell you, sells around 22,000 books a week.
Yeah, it seems like a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, and it's consistent. It's like rock solid. It's impossible to knock that guy off of the Wall Street Journal bestseller list number 1. It's like impossible.
Yeah, once you get on this, it almost has like I would imagine it's like 4-Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. You know, just kind of like these iconic books that everyone reads if you're going to be a business person. And you're like, okay, I read Good to Great and Atomic Habits, 4-Hour Work Week, and Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. You know, it feels like everyone has read those books. So like getting into that seems really hard because you have to knock someone off. Like, as you said, it's rock solid for James Clear to be moving 22,000 units. I don't think your goal is to do that. But, you know, if someone wants to write a book that becomes the next Atomic Habits, like, how do they do that? Like, what is the formula for that?
I mean, there's different steps. There's the first step, which is the launch, which is the only process that I've really gone through so far, where you want to sell a whole bunch of books in a short period of time so you can actually hit the bestseller list. I had a 3-prong attack. One, I reached out to anyone who's ever sponsored me in the past, and I asked them to do a bulk book buy for their audience. Ultimately, in order to get books to count, you actually have to get books in the hands of real people. And if you want to sell like thousands and thousands of books by launch, unless you have this gigantic audience, then you have to leverage other people's audiences. So a lot of the books I sold were from people who bought in bulk and they distributed them, you know, for free to their audience. I also went on as many podcasts. Actually, I didn't go on as many podcasts as I could because that would. So here's the thing. I hired a book launch coach to help me navigate through all this. And initially, he was like, hey, just try to go on 200 podcasts if you can. I'm like, 200 podcasts? That's 200 hours of my time, right? And so I asked him flat out, like, what's the biggest bang for the buck that I can do without having to sacrifice 200 hours of my time? He's like, well, the biggest bang for your buck is to do a lot of good bonuses for your own audience and also get companies to do bulk buys. And then just go on the heavy hitting podcasts. Like, don't do that many podcasts, but just focus on like 10 or 20 of the ones that have gigantic audiences. So that's essentially what I did.
Like e-commerce conversations.
Like e-commerce conversations, for example, like this one. Yeah.
I mean, it seems as easy. It's like, oh yeah, just get on the huge podcast. But don't everyone want to be on the huge podcast? Like, how do you?
They do.
Is that where the publisher comes into play?
Publisher does nothing, really. I don't want to say nothing, but they do very little, let's just say. Okay. The way I got on these large podcasts were just, here, I'll tell you my strategy. I had 2-3 years to plan ahead for this. So I got on as many of the big podcasters on my own podcast as I could. I just had them on my show and promoted the heck out of anything that they wanted to sell. And so I just, what's the best way to say it? Like, I dug my well before I was thirsty. So when it came time for my book to be launched, I hit up all those people and said, hey, you know, remember me? I was wondering if you'd be willing to have me on your show. I have a book coming out. And almost all of them said yes. So it's really a networking play, right?
Yeah, so it's bringing on other podcasters to your own show. So it's also building your own podcast.
That's correct. But, you know, I leveraged a lot of the social currency. Like, I never asked anyone for favors. I basically asked them all during my book launch week.
Like, this is the one favor I'm ever going to ask from you?
Well, I mean, I didn't put it like that, but yeah. Like, I never asked for anything. And I just promoted the heck out of them, you know, for a long time.
Do you feel like that drove a lot of awareness and sales? Like, how much transparency do you have in the numbers of how your books are doing?
Yeah, I get a number every week, once a week, pretty much. And based on that, you either put the pedal down or you can let up or whatnot. Because it's a ton of work. There was a period where I was going on podcasts 4 times a day for a stretch of 2 weeks, and that was pretty miserable. I don't think I would. I don't even know how much those move the needle because you can't even tell whether those move books. I will say, though, that having all that exposure hit in 1 week was pretty amazing from just a publicity standpoint. I really don't know if it moved any books. I think what moved the most books were the bulk buys and the bonuses that I was including for the books. I was taught by my book launch coach to not sell the book, sell the bonuses. And if you think about it this way, most people, yeah.
What is the bonus?
I offered 3 bonuses. One was a 3-day workshop on how to get started with print on demand, which I consider like a gateway drug to e-commerce. I also had a 2-day workshop on how to get started and make money with blogging, YouTubing, and podcasting, which are 3 things that I do. And then I also offer up a 6-week, what I call a family first challenge, which actually starts in a couple weeks, where I'll be going live in a private Facebook group to help everyone with their side hustles. So those are 3 bonuses.
If they bought the book, they would get access to those things.
That's correct. Not only just buy the book, they had to buy the hardcover version of the book, because only the hardcover version of the book counts towards the bestseller list.
How do you verify that? Do they have to show a picture and then you screen through that?
Yeah, I had everyone upload a copy of their receipt in a Google form, and then I added them to a private membership site that I created, where they have access to all this stuff. And if you think about it this way, I didn't really believe him until the first week when I tried to sell my book to my list. Like, I just blasted it out, and I got very few sales. People don't read these days. The average adult reads less than 1 book a year. So
yeah, I'm one of those average guys.
Well, then I must have fulfilled your quota for the year then, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I've got it right by my Eames chair in my living space. So how many people take up that bonus? Because that seems like that can become a really large burden of work as well. Like having 3 different offers, I guess 2-part question. Was one offer more compelling to most people? Or did you do just kind of here's an offer for this podcast, here's an offer for this podcast, here's an offer for this podcast, and kind of A/B test, which was the best one?
No, you get them all
for
buying the book. Instantly.
They get 3 offers.
Instantly, yeah.
How many people are taking you up on this?
Thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. People want instant gratification. It's really hard to sell something that's not coming out for 3 months, let alone something you got to read, right?
Yeah.
Just in my experience, and this is my first book, so I can't speak for everyone, but selling this book was actually harder than selling one of my classes that I charged thousands of dollars for. People just don't want to put in the work to read a book. They want something instantly that they can have right now.
Yeah. So you got the offers. You got thousands of people buying it. You have companies that are doing bulk buys. How are the companies buying it in bulk? Do they go to Barnes & Noble and just buy all of them? Or what is that process?
No. So they pay me directly. And in return, I was doing, podcast reads for them. For some companies who paid more, I was doing a YouTube video for them. Basically, whatever they wanted. I got a little creative. One person wanted me to do a webinar with their company, which I was fine doing with because, I'm a big proponent of their software. So depending on what they wanted, I did different things. They would pay me the money for the bulk books. And then I would have them send me a spreadsheet of people who wanted the book along with their addresses. And I made sure all those people got books directly from Barnes & Nobles.
So you had to go and buy it and then ship
Correct.
it?
Well, I didn't physically do that.
Right. But someone, because you're not buying it all from the same Barnes & Noble, right?
Correct. Right. And they're all going to separate addresses. I mean, you can just place these orders online. They go to separate addresses.
Okay, so their online orders count towards...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely count. Yeah. The key really is that individual people are getting the books.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter that you're placing all the orders as long as they're going to different people?
Well, so my book launch coach took care of all that stuff. I don't know how he does it. I didn't do any of that work.
Okay.
What I did do work on was I run a class of about 5,000 people, and I was doing, signed copies for them and special bonuses for them because those are my super fans, right? And so for those people, I did do the shipping of the books myself. It wasn't a big burden because, we run an e-commerce company. We ship out stuff all the time.
Have you seen any lift to Bumblebee and My Wife Quit Her Job?
For My Wife Quit Her Job, definitely. For Bumblebee, I don't think so. I mean, we sell handkerchiefs, right? What are the chances that someone wants a handkerchief? Pretty low.
I don't know. It's not my business. So this is a huge business with a lot of investment up front, a lot of, I haven't even talked about how do you write the book? I assume that takes serious amount of time and energy or resources if you're working with someone to help you write it, bring it together. Like they gave you a 6-figure advance. Like with all these efforts, are you making any money or not?
I'll probably come out ahead a little bit. But again, like I wouldn't go into this book writing business with the intention of making a lot of money. It's more for me an ego play, really, right? My mom has never read anything that I've ever done. She's never listened to a podcast. She's never watched a YouTube video. When I told her that I was doing a book, she got all excited, especially when she found out it was published by a real publisher that she'd heard of before. So it's an ego play.
Yeah. You're doing this 100% to please your mother. Right?
Probably. There's a lot of childhood trauma that we can talk about. Maybe we'll save that for a separate episode.
Yeah, with your mother?
Childhood stories. But yeah, I'll probably come out ahead, and I fully plan on selling enough books to exceed my advance and just making it part of my overall marketing strategy going forward. Because I feel like I have a unique message compared to like all the other, make money online guys. And so it's just different. It's just a way to differentiate yourself. And then having made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, that adds credibility to everything that I do.
Yeah, all you need to do is make it 1 week. Is that the goal?
All you need to do is make it 1 week to call yourself a bestseller. And then that title sticks with you forever.
Look at you, man.
But I want to stay on there in the long run. That takes time, right? You got to go on a lot of podcasts. You got to make people aware of your book. And hopefully later on down the line, it becomes a household book, like a 4-Hour Work Week, like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's kind of like a long-term goal. That'll take a while, though.
Yeah. How long does it take to get on? Like, all these are about getting sales within what type of time frame is it? Like within a
1 week? 1 week.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, all my sales I want to happen this week.
Correct.
To get on.
Correct. Yeah. That's why it's challenging. Your best chance of hitting it is on the first week because all the pre-orders count. This is why most people start their promotion like 3 months in advance. And I've already mentioned this before. Selling something that isn't going to be out for 3 months for something that people don't even want to read is difficult.
Yeah. So they can show you the receipt, though, as proof that they ordered it and get access to the offer.
Correct. They could just make a return after, too. I mean, I wasn't checking for that.
Yeah. I mean, if people need to scam you out of $35 or $25,
we got problems there. Yeah. You can also do what my buddy did, which was collect the money and place the orders. And he told me not to do that because he ended up, he's basically a bookstore at that point, right?
Yeah. Do Amazon sales affect that at all? Is that of concern?
Amazon sales count. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Amazon obviously sells the most, followed by Barnes & Nobles. And there's actually a bunch of other independent bookstores as well. And there's also Books Inc., Books and there's more retailers than you think.
Yeah. How many retailers are there? Like, how much distribution do you get for the book?
It's a good question. So if you go with a big 5 publisher, they'll make sure that a lot of these brick and mortar stores have at least one copy. I actually did a little book tour around my neighborhood and all these different places. Most of the Barnes & Nobles and Books Inc. had at least 3 copies, anywhere from 1 to 3 copies. And so I ran a promotion where I was giving out a free t-shirt. Like if you actually buy it in a brick and mortar store, I'll send you a Family First Entrepreneur t-shirt because I want those stores to get sold out of the book so that they order more. And the goal there is to have them carry it in their store as part of their back catalog in the long term.
Yeah. So how many retailers, like, I don't know how many stores Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million or whatever have. Is it 2,000 stores across America? Is it more than that?
I don't know the answer to that question. I just know that Barnes & Nobles is probably the biggest one left in the brick and mortar realm. And they're actually on the upswing. They were hurting for a while, but here's one thing that one of the book launch coaches that I talked to told me. He was telling me that most of the books are actually not sold on Amazon. The majority of books are actually sold in retail, and I was shocked by that. Amazon has a pretty big market share, but it's less than what people buy. And I guess if you think about how many people buy books at like the airport or people who just like collect books and all these independent bookstores, I can see how that's true.
If someone wants to follow your footsteps, write their own book, what resources are you giving them? You had a couple of coaches.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can introduce or give access to?
Here's the thing, like if you're going to go the traditionally published route, you have to have an audience. You're not going to get a book deal unless you have like a following, whether it be on YouTube, podcasting. If if you have a large email list. I don't even know what the definition of large is. I just know that I had enough.
How much did you have? Or what range did you have?
So at the time when I applied, I think my YouTube channel was still pretty small, I think. I want to say it was like 80 or 90K subs. I had been podcasting for a long time. I had an email list of 100K, and then I had my blog.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are a whole bunch of authors who are like researchers, or whatnot, that they don't have an audience at all, but certain publishers will take a chance on them. In terms of resources, I'm happy to refer people to the person that helped me with the book on a case-by-case basis, because you don't want to just, refer anyone, because it's a lot of their time. I mean, just to give you an idea, with the person who helped me write the book, which we haven't talked about yet, I spent a lot of time with this person. We'd have these long 2-hour meetings to help flesh out the book and organize all the material that I already had into something cohesive. And he, obviously he has standards, right? He's not going to work with someone unless he feels that they can get a traditional book deal.
Yeah. So you started working with him after you got the deal, though, right?
No, before the deal.
Oh, okay.
He's the one who helped me put together the proposal.
Oh, okay. And did you pay? Did you pay for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you pay for that. Yeah, I can't remember how much I paid. It was probably on the order of $10,000.
Yeah.
To get the proposal, and he won't take you on unless he feels that you can actually get a book deal, because otherwise that $10,000 is just wasted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't take like a percentage of your sales or anything like that. It's just
he does not take a percentage of sales. No. But your agent does. So you have to hire an agent to get the book deal, because he has all the contacts, right? He knows people at all the big 5 publishers. He knows all the small publishers as well. And if you were to try to do that yourself, it would be really hard for you to even get the meeting. The agent takes, I think, 15%.
And do you have to pay them as well, or they're just getting a straight?
They're getting a cut. You don't pay them up front. They get a cut.
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever your advance is, they get a cut of that. And I'm pretty sure they get a cut of, once you get out of that advance. And basically the agent, it's probably like the best business model, actually. They get you the deal.
You're just connecting people, right? You're
Exactly.
not doing much work other than connecting.
Exactly. Although my agent, we kind of developed a friendship. He's actually local to where I live, and he helped with a bunch of stuff, like questions that I had just in general about the book industry that I didn't know anything about. He really helped with the contract also. Like, I know nothing about book contracts, and he helped me navigate all those things. Ironically, I didn't remember anything, but I trusted him to negotiate a pretty good contract for me.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, all you needed to do was make your mom happy.
Yes.
Did it work?
Okay, so this is what happened. I told her I hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. She doesn't say congrats. She doesn't say good job. She says, "Oh, what number on the list were you?" And I was like, "Oh, I hit number 7." And I told her 7. And it was pretty anticlimactic at that point, because I know she was thinking, "Hey, why didn't you get number 1?"
Oh.
Because frickin' James Clear has the number 1 spot that he's had for like 5 years now or whatever. It's impossible to dethrone that guy. What ended up happening actually is I could have hit like the top 3 spots, but 20% of my books didn't ship on time, I think. So they didn't count until the following week. And for new authors, they typically don't print as many books up front. Because I know like people were emailing me saying, "Hey, they just got the book." And it has to ship for it to count towards the bestseller list.
Yeah. Do you think there's any lessons learned in that?
I knew ahead of time that could happen. And the goal is to have as many pre-orders as possible to kind of prime the pump. But it still happens. I mean, there's things beyond your control.
Yeah. And the list is 10?
List is 10. That's correct.
Yeah. So you comfortably got in there.
Well, things could have gone bad. Like, what if more books didn't count? I might not even hit the top 10, right?
Yeah.
That's why I was nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many, if you don't mind me asking, approximately how many units do you have to sell to get on that list?
It's anywhere, it depends on the time of year. During the summer, it's slower, which was nice. But anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 books in 1 week. If you want to hit the New York Times, you pretty much need at least 5,000, but preferably 10,000. And then there's like an editorial list. Like even if you have the sales, they actually have to want you to be on that list. So that one's like completely arbitrary. The Wall Street Journal is generally based on pure sales.
Okay. And the best-selling list is all books, right? It's not just a category, or is it business books?
No, it's per category. That's correct.
Okay.
Like the Wall Street Journal is the most prestigious one for business. Actually, I take that back. The New York Times is probably the most prestigious. But if you're a business book, the Wall Street Journal list is as prestigious as the New York Times.
Any regrets or lessons or do-overs?
The only thing that I would have done differently is not have the book released around my conference. It was actually the most stressful period that I've faced in a very long time because I was trying to sell tickets to my event and promote the book at the same time. And, in both cases, like if you don't promote, then there's like negative consequences on both, right? For the conference, if I don't fill up those hotel rooms, I have this gigantic bill I have to pay. On the book side, if I don't promote the book, I don't hit the bestseller list, which would really diminish the last 3 years that I spent working on it. So I had to do those two at the same time. And it ended up great, right? Because I ended up selling out and hitting the bestseller list. And it was magical on that last day. Probably wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. Announcing it at the conference.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Sweet. Where can people buy your book? What's it called?
Yeah. So the book is called The Family First Entrepreneur. For more information about it, go to thefamilyfirstentrepreneur.com, especially if you're interested in the bonuses. I'm going to be running that challenge, that 6-week challenge, on June 22nd right now is the tentative date. And if you want to just learn more about what I do or my YouTube channel, podcast, and all that stuff is, go over to mywifequitherjob.com. And if you guys are getting married, I'll hook you up with some handkerchiefs over at bumblebeelinens.com.
Hell yeah. That's probably our number one listener audience. Right? your linens are going to go through the roof.
Yes. Never can have too many linens.
This has been another e-commerce conversations. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I always love having Steve on the show. I could probably talk to him for hours. And in fact, I have talked to him for hours over the years. Happy to have you on. I know it's been a hectic time promoting the book and putting your conference on. So I appreciate you taking time to come on the show.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was good seeing you at the event as well.
As always, cheers. Keep on growing.